This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend. The end of our elaborate plans. The end of everything that stands. The end, no safety or surprise. The end, I'll never look into your eyes again.
Đã tới hai chiều màu hai dương chiều màu muối bạn khơi một tàu màu tiền một tàu nó máu cứ vừa màu đo nó trong khung muốn khơi là nó chọc nó nứng vừa song sái vừa chọc một tàu vừa do cao chọc nứt mờ một tàu nữa mờ la nữa đó mờ la nó vừa hỏi vừa bọt tờ lạch bình một tàu nữa đó bọt tờ lạch bình bắt mà sẽ bọ hai chiều chân luôn hai cái lá máu màu tiền đó máu vừa lang một u Việt Nam vừa lang một tiêm ai plan đó một tàu một tầm lan nhá chuông ở chọc mà.
I don't think that Flynn and Stone should be thought of as irresponsible in their attempt to get up that road on that particular day when they were lost. Others were doing the same thing, and furthermore, they were in pursuit to the story. They were trying to get up where the fighting was taking place. They turned out to be in the wrong place for them, but not at the wrong time. I mean, that was what the game was about, was to see the battle.
There's danger on the edge of town. Ride the King's Highway, baby.
Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon, Vietnam. English photographer Tim Page lived and almost died in this country. In the 1960s, Page and his friends Sean, all three had reputations for daring in pursuit of the picture. To some eyes, the risks they took were reckless, irresponsible. To others, they were quite simply crazy. I first asked Tim Page about his fascination with war 20 years ago.
What makes anyone want to do anything? I prefer to take pictures of something which is totally black and white, total reality, than I would of something which is... I mean, who really wants to watch the Queen walk around, you know? I mean, it's just not interesting.
Not so long after that interview, Page was seriously wounded for the fourth time. Medics at the field hospital pronounced him DOA, dead on arrival. For Page, the 60s were over, and the 70s were to be a long, hard road to physical and mental recovery. By the 80s, he was back taking pictures, and back as often as he could manage in Southeast Asia. Page, legendarily the unlucky one, survived. Flynn, slightly wounded twice, and Stone, who never had a scratch, are missing.
Brodar, the breakfast joint. We're right across the street from the Tudo flat. There's the windows right up there. So reputedly it was the place that the film of Graham Greene's book, The Quite American, was shot. This is an unconfirmed rumor. I somehow expect Flynn to come strolling across, waving a joint at me, saying it's time to get on the bikes and go someplace. A war creates a bond, a friendship, a love twixt men. You become so tight with somebody when you share that going to the very edge, and unless you've been there, it's hard for somebody else to understand what you're talking about.
A preoccupation with danger and death and the darker side of man's behavior in war came to characterize Flynn's photography. The same was true of his companion on the day of their disappearance, Dana Stone. He too had arrived in Vietnam in 1966. But where Flynn was saddled with the Son of label, Stone came from plain folks in upstate Vermont. Flynn was 6'2" and dashingly handsome. Stone was 5'6" with thick glasses. Flynn had countless female admirers. Stone had somehow always been with Louise Smizer, Smize to her friends. What the two men did have in common was the war. Before long, Stone recorded his thoughts and sent them home to the folks in Vermont.
It's like Churchill said, nothing's more exhilarating than to be shot at and missed. You really think you're something.
These are scenes from a celebrated CBS News documentary entitled Charlie Company, the unvarnished life of one small unit in the field. Stone shot some of the most intimate footage, simply of men moving cautiously through the jungle. Like Flynn, Stone had quickly found the sharp end of the war.
Vietnam sure is tough on you. I never had much trouble before with jungle rot. You know, you get little nicks, cuts, and they get infected. They get open sores. But now they seem to stay longer. Maybe I'm staying out in the rain more. This is a tough country on your old bod. Tough on equipment, too.
I think Dana was driven by something internally, not by a rivalry with Tim Page or Sean Flynn or anyone else. I think that Dana came out to Vietnam not knowing a hell of a lot about photography. I think that he learned it, and I think he learned it quickly like everything else. Dana was a quick study, but he worked hard at it as well, and he was very proud of what he did.
Dana Stone took this picture during an American operation in the village of Bong Son in February 1967. Sending it home to his family, he wrote on the back, "The family hid in their bomb shelter and wouldn't come out, so a grenade was tossed in. Out came 5 or 6 bloody people, but there were more noises from the bunker, so a smoke grenade was added. Still no one came out, so the old man was sent in and emerged with his son, covered with blood and yellow dye. The boy died a few minutes later in his father's arms as their home burned to ashes in the background. It's a full life, isn't it?" It was, of course, obligatory to maintain a tough, unconcerned exterior for newsmen as well as troops. Stone had need of this shell when he spent some time in a beleaguered Marine outpost called Con Tien.
So these poor kids just lived in their holes. I spent 3 days there when it was really bad. And in that 3 days, there was one guy I never saw out of his holes. He just stood in that hole, clutched his rosary beads. 3 days I was there, they had over 375 wounded. I don't know how many killed. 375 people in 3 days. So I wandered around, I got my pictures, and I knew I was getting good stuff, and I liked it. Once you go through stuff like this with people, you get very close to people. The 152, you hear the guns shoot, and that's part of the horror. Goddamn, that stuff just pounds in on you, pow, 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 everywhere, all around you, bouncing you around, and you just, oh, you want to stop. And then it's quiet, and you think, oh, it's over. Then you hear the guns go off again, and you know in a couple seconds stuff's going to be beating on your head again. Did you people see that time cover before I sent it to you? I want to make sure you knew about it. It's about the biggest thing that's happened to me yet.
He once had a picture on the cover of Time magazine, and he used to hang it in the UPI room in the press center, and I would take it down and hide it on him. We were always playing games with each other in that respect. Dana Stone was very savvy in the field. He picked up things very quickly. When he saw that things weren't right, he would go and tell the officer that he ought to be doing this or he ought to be doing that. He told me a story that he'd been operating with a Marine unit up in the I-Corps area, and that he felt that the security on the flanks wasn't adequate. He the Marine officer told him, said, well, you know, if you don't like it, why don't you go check it out yourself then? And Dana, who didn't ordinarily carry a weapon in the field, took a shotgun from some Marine and went out on the flank and discovered a VC soldier there and killed him.
Ha Tan Special Forces Camp, South Vietnam, September 1968. American-led forces are battling to regain Outpost 4. Flynn is shooting second camera for a CBS News team. Stone is taking still pictures for the Associated Press. Outpost 4 has been taken by the North Vietnamese, and already today they've driven back 2 American assaults. This is the third attempt to retake the hill, and the Americans and their local mercenaries, known as a Mike Force, are taking casualties. In this shot, which survives without sound, the situation's getting hotter near the hilltop. An American officer in the center background gets a grenade. Everybody's told to get down. The officer lobs the grenade, only a matter of a few feet. Everyone keeps their heads down. The grenade explodes, and the officer urges everyone forward. Meanwhile, a little way down the slope, Stone is caught up in another wounded officer's personal drama. Tim Page picks up the narrative as told to him by Flynn and Stone soon after the engagement.
The Mike Force assaults the hill under fire, inching its way up. And all the American cadre who are with the Mike Force are all incapacitated by incoming fire, leaving our lad, Flynn, as the sole Caucasian left on the field to pick up the charge and wave the leaderless mercenaries over the final crumbled bunkers and trench lines until the hill was retaken.
Is calling us, the blue bus is calling us, travel where you take us.
About Flynn, they would say he's playing games with people's lives. Well, he wasn't playing games with people's lives. The people who were doing that were back in Washington. He was having an experience for him, a very deeply moving, changing experience. I mean, he was very changed by that war, and it was just one of those turns of fate, you know, that he rode down this road. But was it a turn of fate, or was he headed where he was always headed? I don't know.
March 1970, a new theatre for the war. A military coup d'etat in neighbouring Cambodia throws the country into turmoil, and out of the forest comes a scarcely known force, the Khmer Rouge. The press and television, who rushed to cover the story, were soon to discover that the shadowy Khmer Rouge had little respect for captured newsmen.
I know several journalists who were killed, and they had said just before the day they'd gone out, you know, these other guys were idiots for getting shot or getting picked up, and if you just watch yourself, it's never going to happen. The trouble was that nobody really did watch themselves, and you were getting pushed to take by people in New York to take more and more chances to get the story.
Those chances have to be taken. Certainly no editor sitting back in New York is going to say, take those chances. But every correspondent out in the field knows that if you're going to get the stories, chances, that's part of the game. And unfortunately, some people lose.
the small town of Chi Phu, southeastern Cambodia. There were many journalists here in April 1970, drawn by the knowledge that a war was going on somewhere down this road. Most decided the situation was too uncertain and Chi Phu was far enough.
And you could see that Flynn was hot to trot. Flynn was really wanting to go down there and mingle with Charlie. Charlie don't surf, but Flynn does. Stone wants to get home to Schmei's. Stone's in love. It's the last gig for Stone and out. He don't want to go, but Flynn ain't going to leave a buddy behind. There is, I imagine, a fairly heavy interchange with the older Stone deriding Flynn for his madness, and Flynn calling Stone boy. Hey boy, you going, picking up the Honda keys and throwing them right out the fucking window. Go pick them up, man. Go pick them up. We're going to ride the street.
Come on.
And they set off down the street.
Love my girl. She looking good. Come on. One more. 5 to 1, baby. 1 in 5. No one here gets out alive now. You get yours, baby. I'll get mine. Gonna make it, baby, if we try.
Flynn had travelled this stretch of road 3 days earlier with another reporter. They'd seen Viet Cong troops and American planes bombing. This day, April the 6th, 1970, as he and Stone probed further, Flynn was heard to say, "I know it's dangerous, but that's what makes it a good story." The Vietnamese had set their ambush 6.5 kilometres east of Chi Phu. A few months later, Time correspondent Bob Anson also ran into a Viet Cong roadblock. Marched into the jungle at gunpoint, he was held for 3 weeks. Unlike Flynn and Stone, Anson was released.
I think in part it's a matter of dumb luck. The nature of a unit that you happen to bump into when you're captured. Fortunately, I was captured by North Vietnamese. They had some Khmer Rouge with them, but the North Vietnamese were clearly in charge. Had I been captured by the Khmer Rouge, we wouldn't be having this conversation. That was quite clear to me, that these were really brutal guys who would kill you just as soon as look at